In this tutorial, we're going to look at some of the most useful functions to work with string values. Here are a few examples. We can call the length function to get the number of characters in a string. For example, if you pass sky here and then select the result, we get 3 because we have 3 characters in sky. We also have the upper and lower functions for converting a string to uppercase or lowercase characters. So if we call upper of sky, we get sky in uppercase. And we also have the lower function. So if we pass sky with a capital S, it returns sky in lowercase. Pretty straightforward. We also have 3 useful functions for removing unnecessary spaces in a string. These functions are pretty useful when we deal with data entered by the user. Sometimes people type an unnecessary space before or after a value, so we can clean or trim these values using these 3 functions. The first one is ltrim, which is short for left trim. So if we pass sky and add a few spaces at the beginning, look, we get sky without those leading spaces. The other function is rtrim, which is short for right trim. So if we pass sky with a few spaces after, this function removes all these extra unnecessary spaces. Alternatively, we can call the trim function trim, and this will remove any leading or trailing spaces. Again, pretty straightforward. We also have the left function for returning a few characters from the left side of a string. So we can call this function and pass 2 arguments. Let's say kindergarten, that is our string. And let's say we want to get the first 4 characters. So we get kind. Another similar function is right, which does the opposite of the left function. So let me change 4 to 6. And now this will return 6 characters from the right side of the string. We also have the substring function. And with this, we can get a few characters from anywhere in a string. So here's our string. The second argument is the start position. And the third argument is the length. So when we call this function, MySQL will go to position 3. That is 1, 2, 3. It starts at n, and then it will pick 5 characters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is why we get NDERG here in the result. Now, this third argument is actually optional. So if you leave it out, this will return all the characters from the start position to the end of the string. Take a look. There you go. Another useful function is locate, which returns the position of the first occurrence of a character or a sequence of characters. For example, we can call locate with these values. The first argument is our search string. So let's say we want to search for n in kindergarten. When we call this, we get 3 because the position of the first n in this string is 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Now, it doesn't matter if we use lowercase or uppercase characters, we get the same result because the searching is not case sensitive. Now, what if we search for a character that doesn't exist in our string? Let's say Q. We get 0. So this is different from a lot of programming languages. In most programming languages, if we search for a character that doesn't exist in a string, we get -1. In MySQL, we get 0. We can also search for a sequence of characters like garden, and this will return the first occurrence of the word garden in our string. Take a look. That is 7. So garden starts from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? We can also replace a character or a sequence of characters. So we call the replace function and give it 3 arguments. The first argument is our string, kindergarten. Then what we want to replace, let's say garden with a T. We want to replace this with garden with a D. Let's run this query. So we get kindergarten with a D. And finally, the last function we're going to look at in this lecture is concat, which we use for concatenating 2 strings. So if we have a first name and a last name, we can combine them into 1 string, like this. Here's a better example. So we can go to our SQL store database, select all the records from the customers table, As you know, here we have two separate columns for the first and last name. Now we can combine these two using the concat function. So concat, first name, then we add a space, and finally the last name. Now let's give it an alias, full name, and here's the full name for each customer. So these are the most useful functions to work with strings in MySQL. Once again, you can find the complete list of these functions by searching for MySQL string functions. Here's the MySQL reference manual. And on this page, you can see all the string functions that we have in MySQL.